I know this might sound weird, but would you like to come over to my place? That day, I invited a beautiful married woman who had collapsed under a street lamp in the park to my home. When I asked her what had happened to put her in such a state, she explained that she had lost her husband and had been kicked out by her in-laws, leaving her in a difficult situation. Some time later, for some reason, I found myself being taken by this beautiful woman to stand in front of a big corporation. "From today, you're the CEO of this company," she said. "From today, you're the CEO of this company." What? My name is Tyler Winters, and I'm 30 years old. I work as a comedian. Actually, this name is my stage name. My real name is Tyler Watson. I was born in winter, that's why I decided my stage name. Seriously, as a comedian, it's a pretty lame reason. When I was coming up with my stage name, I thought about using Steelman as in stealing the hearts of fans, but I ended up using my stage name as it is. So instead of the number 5, I twisted the number 9 above it, turned Winter 9 into katakana, and decided on talk. A comedian's life depends on their mouth, their talk, so it works on that level too. I used to have a comedy partner, but now I'm on my own. In other words, I'm a solo comedian. Ever since I was a kid, I've admired comedians and always thought that someday I wanted to make lots of people happy with my own comedy. I want to be a comedian in the future. Tyler, are you serious about that? That's not even a real job. It's just playing around. Listen, only a handful of people can make a living off of comedy. Even if you miraculously become popular, your moment in the sun will pass in an instant and you'll be forgotten. I'm telling you this for your own good. Give it up. But for my parents, living a steady life in a mid-sized regional city, my dream must have seemed unrealistic and unstable. I understand that my parents are just worried about me, but I have a dream that I want to achieve too. If I'm gonna do it anyway, I wish they wouldn't put me down, but support me instead. I desperately tried to convince them of that, but in the end, it was impossible to get them to understand how I felt. So I left home under the pretext of going to college, and I feel bad for my parents, but I dropped out right away. After that, I entered a comedy school and became a comedian, just like I'd hoped. But even though I achieved my dream of becoming a comedian, the reality is harsh and there's no sign of me making it big at all. There's a saying that goes living in obscurity, but it doesn't mean that one can't succeed in the future. Everyone has a chance to be famous one day. If that's the case, then I've just been living in obscurity for 10 years now. No, I might not able to be seen in public. I barely have any work as a comedian, and most of my income comes from part-time jobs. It's nowhere near enough to live on. Falling behind on rent and having the electricity and gas shut off is a regular occurrence. The good thing about this world is that your senior comedians look out for you. Thanks to them, I can at least manage to eat. Today, I did about 15 minutes of material on stage at a shopping district festival that paid around $100 and took home some muffins that were served with tea without eating them. The venue was relatively close, so I walked both ways without taking the train. I'm used to it if it's only about an hour each way. I'm finally almost home. That's when I noticed something as I passed through the park near my apartment. Under the light of the street lamps that were starting to dim, I saw a shadow of something lying on the ground a little ways in from the entrance. That's a pretty big shadow. Did someone dump an old blanket they didn't need? When I thought that and went to take a closer look, I was surprised to find a woman collapsed there. "Hey, are you all right?" I called out in a panic. The woman moved her head a little to look at me when I called out to her. "I'm fine," she replied, but her voice, as faint as a mosquito's buzz, conveyed otherwise. "Why are you sleeping in a place like this?" This spot where the woman was lying was technically inside the park. Bicycles weren't allowed in here either, so it probably wasn't an accident. I squatted down to try to help her sit up, but the moment I did, I froze. It was because when I changed my angle, I saw that the woman's face was incredibly beautiful. Feeling intimidated, my hand instinctively retreated. Well, what should I say? She was so much my type that I was at a loss for words. This is awkward. How should I talk to her? "It's okay, I can move on my own." The woman said that and tried to get up, supporting herself with both hands. But just then, her stomach growled loudly. Could it be that she collapsed from hunger? I'm sorry you had to see me in such an unsightly state." The woman blushed and apologized, and then her stomach growled again right away. You're hungry, right? If you'd like, have this." I took out the muffins I'd brought from the venue. The woman gulped as she looked at them. "Here you go." The woman seemed hesitant and didn't reach out to take them. I unwrapped the muffins and forcibly put them in her hand. Then, finally looking at the muffins in her hand, she took a bite. "It's delicious." Little by little, the woman finished eating the muffins with relish. "How long has it been since you last ate?" The woman seemed to have trouble answering my question, but perhaps feeling indebted for the muffins, she finally replied in a small voice. 3 days. No wonder she collapsed. According to the woman, who said her name was Catherine, she had been kicked out of her in-laws' home 3 days ago. My in-laws disliked me from the start, even before I got married. After my husband passed away, they told me they couldn't keep me in their house anymore. I ended up sitting on a park bench and listening to Catherine's story. Apparently, Catherine's parents had died in an accident when she was in elementary school, and since she had no relatives, she was raised in an institution until she graduated middle school. After graduating, she got a job at a food company that had a dormitory. She worked there until she got married. I met my husband through a shared hobby. We really hit it off, and a year after we started dating, he proposed. But when my in-laws found out about my background, they strongly opposed the marriage. Still, her husband convinced them, and her in-laws reluctantly consented to the marriage. Her in-laws probably wanted their precious only son to marry a woman from a good family, but they must have adored their only son and thought that if they kept opposing the marriage, he would come to resent them or tell them he wouldn't live with them. That kind of story is pretty common. And so, Catherine and her husband seemed to have a happy married life. But then, her husband passed away suddenly. He left the house saying "I'm off like always," and never came back. Her husband had a heart attack at work and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. But by the time he arrived, it was too late. I was in shock. It was so sudden, I couldn't even exchange any last words with him. After her husband's wake and funeral, her in-laws started blaming Catherine together. "It's your fault our son ended up like that. It's because he got involved with a woman like you that he lost his luck." As if Catherine's grief over suddenly losing her beloved husband wasn't enough, her in-laws relentlessly berated her as if it was all her fault. And 3 days ago, I was finally kicked out of my marital home. They barged into the room filled with memories of her husband like demons and declared to Catherine, "Get out. Now that our son is gone, you have no right to be here. Fortunately, you didn't have any children. There's not a single thing of yours in this house. Leave everything and get out." And so, she was kicked out with nothing but the clothes on her back. I had no money and nowhere to go, so I was trying to find any work I could. But I was thrown out of the house without even being allowed to take any belongings, so it was hard to find a decent job. Driven by hunger, she had come to this park to try to fill her stomach with water from the faucet. I managed to drink some water, but I collapsed just as I was trying to leave the park. And that's when I happened to pass by. "Thanks to you, I was saved." "Thank you so much." Catherine said that and appreciated politely, but there's no way a single muffin could have satisfied her hunger. Not at all. I didn't do anything special. You don't have anywhere to go, right? This might sound weird, but would you like to come to my place? At this offer, Catherine stiffened. "You're wary, of course. Then, could you take a look at this?" I showed Catherine the new material I had performed at the event earlier that day. At first she just stared blankly, but gradually she started chuckling, which relieved me in many ways. "I'm a comedian working under the stage name Tyler Winters. I'd love to treat you to a meal somewhere, but I'm still a struggling comedian. I don't have enough money to eat out, but I have some bread and stuff at my place, so if that's okay, I could treat you to that." What do they call this kind of thing? Oh yeah. Even brief encounters are the result of fate. I desperately tried to explain that I had no ulterior motives. "So you're a comedian? Well then, I'll gratefully accept your offer." Catherine seemed to think for a bit, but for some reason she said that, appreciated, and agreed to come with me. My house was about a 5-minute walk from the park where I met Catherine. Actually, I'm quite indebted to the faucet in that park myself. When I don't have money to go to the public bath, I wash myself at that faucet. It's tough in the winter, but it's better than nothing. This is the daily life of a struggling comedian. A studio room with a kitchen. There is a toilet, but no bath. This is all I have. Luckily, I had some bread left. Since there was nothing to add, we split the plain bread between us. It's delicious and tasty. I used to live like this too, back in the day. Somehow, even this plain bread tasted good when eating it together with Catherine. Oh right, I have that too. There were 2 eggs in the fridge. I was planning to eat them for breakfast tomorrow, but I'll splurge and bring those out too. I don't often cook, but I can at least make sunny side egg. It's hard to control the heat, but I'm used to it by now. Luckily, I had 2 pats of margarine left in the fridge. The kind that comes wrapped in foil with flight meal. These were also something I had received and guarded with my life when I went out for sales. This completely emptied out my fridge, but I'll worry about tomorrow when it comes. If you haven't eaten for 3 days, this definitely isn't enough. Not at all. This is plenty. Thank you so much for this. I'll find a way to repay you later. Saying that, Catherine stood up and tried to leave the room. You don't have anywhere to go or any money, right? I promise I won't do anything weird. So please, rest here tonight. I feel like I might have said it in a strange way, but hopefully she understands. Hearing your situation, I can't just ignore it. I'd be worried if you collapsed again. How about staying here until you find a job and a place to live? I desperately tried to convince Catherine. As a comedian, my words should be my weapon, but I have no idea what to say or how to say it. Seeing me like that, Catherine laughed and said, "Thank you. Then, I'll be in your care until I find a job." Since there's no other room, I let Catherine have my bed and I decided to sleep in the kitchen. I only have 1 set of bedding, but I can manage sleeping wrapped in a blanket in the kitchen. And so, our life together began. From the next day, I went to my part-time job as usual, and it seemed Catherine was also looking for work. I gave Catherine the bare minimum amount of money I could spare from my meager savings. In return, Catherine used that money to buy ingredients and cook meals. I don't know where or how she gets them, but there's actual meat and vegetables. If it were me, I'd probably just buy the cheapest instant noodles or discounted bread. I can't imagine being able to prepare such nutritionally balanced meals with so little money. I'm good at cooking on a budget. I lived like that for many years. It really is delicious. I can't believe we can have such a feast on that budget. When I told her my honest thoughts, Catherine smiled shyly. I'll find a job as soon as I can. Until then, I'll help with the housework. So, please let me stay. Catherine said that and kindly asked, "You're helping me out too." "Thank you. Honestly, doubling my food expenses is tough for me right now. But somehow, I feel like there's a difference between working just to get by on my own and doing it for someone else's sake. It's strange how even though I increased my part-time hours and worked hard starting that day, it doesn't feel like a hardship." Catherine also seems to be looking for work, but it appears she can find a kind of job she wants. And so, our modest but peaceful life continued for a while. In the midst of days filled with part-time jobs and hardly any real work, a job suddenly falls into my lap out of nowhere, just like always. So, I'm going out to do sales for my real job this time. I make more money from part-time work than sales, but I'm happier doing work as a comedian after all. Hearing my words, Catherine said something unexpected. "Tyler, could I see your material?" "Huh? Sure, but why?" "Remember how I said my late husband and I shared the same hobby? Well, that hobby was actually comedy. So that's how it was. But I was surprised that comedy was their shared interest. I lived in an institution from elementary school, but sometimes comedians or amateur volunteers would come and do various things for us, and it was really fun. I've been a fan of comedy ever since. Hearing her story, I agreed with understanding. I suppose that kind of thing happens. I performed my new stand-up routine in front of Catherine. Honestly, it's somehow embarrassing to show my material in this way. I don't mind performing in front of strangers, but I feel shy showing it to someone close to me. After watching, Catherine applauded with a gentle expression, but after it was over, she said something unexpected. "To be honest, I think the material itself is highly polished. but it's a waste for you to do it as a stand-up routine, Tyler. What? I felt like she said something quite harsh. I'm sorry, but that's my honest opinion. I think you have a talent for writing material, Tyler, but you don't really have the talent to perform it. Hearing that, I was speechless. And then, various things came back to me all at once. The opinions and evaluations of my comedy from various people who had seen it. The wounds of hardly ever being appreciated in the past. My emotions instantly went back to that time, and before I knew it, I was retorting to Catherine. What do you know about comedy? You, an amateur who's not even a comedian. Catherine wasn't at fault at all, but those honest words pierced my wounds, and everything I had sealed away came gushing out at once. If you're going to act so high and mighty, why don't you try it yourself? Anyone can just talk. I was yelling louder than I even thought. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Surprisingly, Catherine didn't back down an inch and retorted. You have a talent for creating material, Tyler, but you don't have the star quality to be a comedian. I had never been told anything this extreme before, and I was left speechless. So instead of being a comedian, why not choose the path of a writer or producer? I think even talent can go to waste if you use it the wrong way. It was a suggestion I had never considered. A writer? Yes, that, or a producer. There are many ways to make people laugh. Not just performing yourself, but also nurturing others. After saying that, Catherine listed off the names of several comedy duos. Among them was the name of my former comedy partner. For example, if you had that duo perform the material from earlier, I think the venue would erupt in laughter. It's such a waste to do it as a solo act. When she said that, it struck a chord. Before breaking up with my former partner, we had a fight and he said something similar then too. That if possible, he wanted to do my material with someone else. If you seriously want to go down that path, Tyler, I might be able to help. What do you say? What do I say to what? Could you spare some time tomorrow? You said that sales gig was at noon, right? After that, please accompany me. And so, before I knew what was happening, I had made a promise with her. The next day, I went to the sales venue with Catherine. I'm sorry, but please don't do the new material from yesterday. I want to negotiate using it as a debut piece. Since she said that, I decided to do material I had done before this time. Of course, the laughter from the audience was so-so today too. I did get applause, but no big laughs. I took my payment for the day and the muffins that were served with tea again, and headed somewhere with Catherine. We had arrived at a major talent agency. Or rather, I'm also a minor member of this agency. Kingsley Office. My husband's parents' company. What in the world is going on? I had heard that Catherine's surname was Kingsley, but it's such a common name that I didn't pay it any mind. Leaving me standing there bewildered, Catherine brusquely walked up to the reception desk. I'd like to see the chairman. If you tell him Catherine is here, I think he'll understand. She spoke with the receptionist for a while, and eventually several people surrounded her and a certain man appeared. Catherine, we've been looking for you. Jake. Surprisingly, the person who appeared was the second-generation chairman of Kingsley Office, Jake Kingsley. He was the legendary shrewd CEO who had taken over a small talent agency from the previous generation and developed it into a major agency rivaling other top agencies in just one generation. Now he has passed the position of CEO to his daughter and son-in-law and taken the role of chairman. Come to think of it, I had heard that his third son's grandchild got married a few years ago and was expected to eventually become CEO, but I also heard that grandchild passed away a short while ago. Which means, could it be that Catherine is that grandchild's wife? Grandfather Jake. I knew it. An unbelievable scene was unfolding before my eyes. Catherine and I were called into the chairman's office, where Catherine explained various things to the chairman. And Catherine also told me things I hadn't known before. As she had said herself, after graduating middle school, Catherine lived in a factory dormitory and worked there. She wasn't really able to get close to other people, and hardly talked about anything other than work each day, living a lonely life. Catherine's joy during that time was attending various events on her days off. Famous or unknown, professional or amateur, she would go see all kinds of comedy events and have a great laugh. At one of those venues, she met a certain man. That was my husband. Catherine and her late husband Harry had an age gap of 12 years. At first I just thought he was someone I saw often, but by chance we started talking. That Harry introduced Catherine to his grandfather, the chairman, saying there was an interesting girl. She got to know the chairman as well, not realizing they were the CEO of the agency, and started interacting with them as the older brother who she could talk about comedy with, and his grandfather. That life continued for about 3 years, and then the chairman invited her to work at their company for the first time. Catherine had a keen eye for comedy, you see. That's why I recruited her. Catherine was officially hired as an office worker, but it seems they would privately consult with her about comedians. Eventually, Harry and Catherine developed feelings for each other, and the topic of marriage came up. But the current CEO couple, the chairman's daughter and son-in-law, opposed it. My daughter and her husband wanted Harry to marry the daughter of a major talent agency or a celebrity family, and use that connection to make the company bigger. However, Harry and Catherine overcame the opposition and got married, living a happy life together. But then Harry collapsed at work and passed away. Even so, the chairman continued to treat Catherine as his grandchild. But it seems the CEO couple kicked Catherine out while the chairman was on an overseas business trip. The chairman searched extensively but had no leads and was worried when Catherine showed up bringing me along. "Catherine, won't you come back? If being my grandchild-in-law is too much, then at least as a work partner." Actually, about that. Saying that, Catherine introduced me to the chairman. "Tyler has talent as a producer. Kingsley will fail at this rate. Could you bring Tyler on as a managing director?" What? In my opinion, the CEO is going about promoting comedians the wrong way. You're selling them in a way that makes them popular for a short time and then they disappear. Catherine stated firmly, just as she had evaluated me. I thought so too. We can't leave things to that couple. If only Harry were here. The chairman said that sadly and sighed. Suddenly, there was a shocking announcement from the major talent agency Kingsley office. "I would like to introduce our newly appointed CEO, Tyler Winters." That's right. Catherine introduced me to the chairman, and when the chairman decided to reform the company, he made the CEO couple resign and put me in the CEO's seat. If Catherine says so, it must be true. She has a keen eye for comedy. From today, you're the CEO. I was so surprised by the situation that I couldn't even respond. And Catherine said to me with a serious expression, "Tyler, would you please accept the position with the intention of saving Kingsley?" The chairman and Catherine's clue was successful, and before I knew it, things had turned out this way. And so, this unbelievable modern-day reverse My Fair Lady story ended up being featured in the media. The CEO couple was transferred to a subsidiary that was newly established to develop idols. No one could object to the chairman's decree. They should be able to find some role there. Saying that, the chairman cut off his daughter and son-in-law from the head office and forcibly appointed me CEO. The authoritarian chairman was in his element. "Nice to meet you. I'm Tyler Watson, formerly known as Tyler Winters, and I've been appointed CEO. I will do everything in my power for the further development of Kingsley." Blinded by flashes like lightning, I finished my inaugural address, my first task as CEO. This news was featured prominently in the next day's newspaper and became a topic on information programs everywhere. And just as Catherine predicted, the young talents I produced started breaking out one after another. But man, was I surprised. About what? I mean, Catherine, you saw that I had talent as a producer just from watching my material once. Catherine laughed at my words. Actually, it wasn't the first time. Catherine confessed while laughing. I used to go to all kinds of events and watch various comedians. That's when I always thought your material was such a waste, Tyler. I remembered that when I saw your act that time. Is that so? When we first met, I was too hungry to think about that, and I'm sorry but you weren't a very memorable comedian, so I didn't realize right away. Catherine was as bluntly harsh as ever. I always thought, if only that duo would do this material, or that comedian would be better for this bit. But I didn't know you were the one writing it, Tyler, so I just thought it was a shame. Her words were harsh, but Catherine was probably right. After all, look how successful things are now. I talked about that with my husband too. We wanted to bring out people's talents in the way that suited them best and produce more and more interesting comedians. Hearing those words, my chest ached. Catherine still thinks about her late husband Harry even now. That fact pierces my heart like a sharp blade. After losing Harry, I lost the will to live for a while. When I met you that time in the park, Tyler, I honestly wouldn't have minded if I had just collapsed and faded away like that. Catherine said that with a lonely smile. But meeting you awakened a desire in me. I remembered the one thing that made me truly happy and able to laugh from my heart during my lonely childhood. I want to bring more and more joyful laughter to everyone. That's what I'm living for now. Catherine's beaming smile as she said that was so dazzling I couldn't look directly at it. You're right. I feel the same way. I remembered that I became a comedian with that same feeling. That's right. Even if the form is different, I can still bring laughter to everyone. I'm satisfied with that for now. Just being able to stand next to Catherine as her work partner is enough. But someday, surely. What? No, it's nothing. I want to be acknowledged by Catherine as her partner in another sense too, like Harry was. That kind of desire has sprouted in me as well. The feelings of the living are what matter most. Well, do your best in various ways. Whether he knew how I felt or not, the chairman said that teasingly and patted me on the shoulder. In that moment, I felt like the chairman's hand and someone else's were there supporting me, urging me on. The person inside Catherine's heart. I want to make her happy, including him. For the sake of that day, I'll take things one step at a time.